leaving that and talking about the poor and the homeless situation in Anchorage, I put 400 hours into this over 2 years, a lot. And I put some of my own money in this, and Dave Cuddy, my banker friend, put up 10 grand and a bunch of time too. And we have an election in Anchorage a few days from now, on the 6th of April, my dad's birthday. I hope I get a birthday present and a new mayor that's going to clean up Anchorage and make it like a town should be. A town where people do care about each other and don't warehouse them in buildings to die sooner. I hope we change it, because what we had is what we have is a crisis of despair here. When you look around the country, that's what we have there too, for other reasons. It's not necessarily Native Americans in LA or Seattle, but it's despair. It's alcoholism, drug abuse, mental illness, primarily, about 80%, 85%. Go ask them, go look at any of it, that's what it'll tell you. Why are we doing this way? In Alaska especially, we're a wealthy place, we don't need to do this. We have the Mental Health Trust. What I suggested was a simple solution, and here's what it was. We don't tax anything here. I said tax alcohol 15%. What would that generate in Anchorage? $45 million a year. 15%. If you're spending $1,000 on alcohol a month, that's going to cost you $150. And if you're drinking $1,000 worth of alcohol, I need $150 from you, because you're doing a lot of damage in my community. Because half the violent crime, half of the rapes, half of the thefts, half of all the death from car wrecks and everything else is alcohol. And in Alaska, you pay 10 cents a drink, and it costs $2.25 or $2.25 a drink to subsidize them. I don't drink a lot of alcohol, one drink a year. I buy some every once in a while. I don't mind paying a little tax on it if I know I'm responsible for problems. The alcohol industry is an irresponsible industry that refuses to be responsible for the damage they've created in this country, or they would be supporting these tax initiatives everywhere in the country and taking responsibility instead of shifting the blame and allowing the death and destruction to continue. I think choices can be made by individuals. When you make them, you pay your own bill. You know what it costs for a pack of cigarettes in Anchorage? It costs $10, $11 a pack. You know what it costs at the wholesale level? About 75%. The rest of that is taxes. Anchorage alone in the local share gets $21 million a year from cigarettes. They get from marijuana, last time I checked, about $4 million a year. And from alcohol, until recently, until I pushed on this hard, we were getting nothing. Zero. And no one was getting run over by a carton of cigarettes. No one was getting raped by a carton of cigarettes. No one was getting murdered by a carton of cigarettes. They were just murdering themselves. Hey, is that proportional? 21 million and nothing for alcoholism? What? That's every community, because alcohol is a powerful lobby that owns a lot of politicians. And they fought us on this. The first time I wanted them to get 15%, they didn't have what it took in leadership in this town to ask for it and dedicate it. I came back around a second time, and this time they roll out 5%. And they got it in the middle of COVID, people willing to tax themselves in the middle. They didn't ask for the right amount because it's not enough to do the job. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, we have 1,100 homeless people here, and up north of here, we have the Palmer Correctional Facility, empty for a decade and a half. Everything there, and the sheets, kept and maintained, heated and warm, 900 beds, reduced to 500 for corrections now because they need more comfortable quarters. How come 500 people didn't spend their time up there in the winter the last 15 years? It was empty. Not enough leadership to make it happen. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, we have the Mental Health Trust throwing off $51 million a year in revenue, passing it around in little handouts, not having an inventory of what their assets are. And the only reason they have any money is because they got raped by the state once and they had to put money back to make up for it, and it's generating money now. Because the Mental Health Trust is a failure. A failure, a million acres, billions of dollars in resources, and they can't figure out how to handle a population of 700,000. That's the whole state, not the mentally ill. That's everybody who lives here. They have billions and billions in assets. They don't know how to even evaluate them and get them to work for them. Talk about a failure of leadership. You have the money, you have the revenue source, you have everything you need except enough leadership to put local and state and federal government together because they're too busy blaming you because you're a Republican, because this liberal city of ours won't work with the Republican people that are running the state because they don't want to give them any credit. Forget about you and I and the people dying here. It's some trust baby. That's who we had as mayor until he literally did pull his pants down in the mayor's office and get caught and went away in shame as a public servant in the mayor's restroom taking selfies for his girlfriend while his wife was at home. Made people mad in Anchorage. He went away. He can't even show his face here. But he ruined this town. And I bawled him out like I've never bawled out anyone in leadership because he ruined my town. This guy doesn't know what it is to suffer. He's a trust baby. He gets a check every month. His idea was, let's build hotels all over town and put homeless people in them. You remember the insane asylums of the 60s that had staff and we decided they were inhumane? Now they're talking about building facilities, putting people in them that are mentally ill and no staff. And then they say, oh no, we're going to staff them. But the same breath they say, but we can't because there's no employees with the skill set. And guess what? We have a state university that didn't produce enough, that know that we needed them 20 years ago. How come they're not producing the workforce we need? Because you got a bunch of academics busy producing academic papers. This is a state university. It started out as a community college network to educate people with a skill set to do work. We don't have enough plumbers. We don't have enough electricians. We don't have tradesmen. They make six figures up here when we have work. Real incomes and real jobs with real benefits. With your hands and your head, you can make a good living with a profession and a trade, and everyone should have both. And instead we have a watered down society that is washed out. Now why do people keep coming into Anchorage and making more camps? I'll tell you why, because when you have the services in Anchorage and you come from a village, living in a tent in Anchorage is a step up for too many people. And because it's accepted as okay in Anchorage to live this way, and it's worse in other places, you come into Anchorage and you think this is okay innocently. These are not people that are doing things purposefully to just violate everything. They get lost in this culture real quick. And there's predators in that mix, preying on them every day. There's not a woman in that group that isn't raped within the first week of being in that group. Raped. A friend of mine owns a business. He's finally able to get it sold, and they've ruined him. But every week he broke up a rape in front of his business in daylight. This should not happen. This is lawlessness. And this is wrong. And the excuses are, oh, we can't do this. We'll be racist if we arrest people. I'm not suggesting arrest people unless they're committing crimes, and I'm saying, yes, we do. I'm saying we need to start meeting people where they are. And if they're committing a crime and they're drug addicts or mentally ill, if that gets us a way to pull them out of that scene, then we should do it. People say, oh, that's inhumane. No, it isn't. When a person can't think for themselves or they're violating the rights of everyone else. We have 100 miles of trails in Anchorage, paved trails, 100 miles. We can't use them safely anymore. I have to take out my city gun and put it in my belt when I walk to the park. And I pull my wilderness gun out when I go to the wilderness. Makes sense. You got bears out there. When I was a child of 8, I could walk in what are now the worst parts of this town where adults don't go during the daylight. That's wrong. We've let criminals take over our cities and we refuse to enforce our laws. We have to enforce laws or get rid of the laws. If we're not going to enforce them, why have them? You want anarchy? Go ahead. Or enforce the laws and meet people where they are and don't penalize them forever for failing. You know, people fail. They clean up their act. We need to find a way to clean up their record too so they can be productive again and not have a bunch of misdemeanors when they were failing. We forgive businesses for screwing all of us in bankruptcy. We forgive all kinds of things in our culture. Why can't we forgive a man who picks himself back up, a woman who picks up her life and puts it back together, and provide a gateway out? That's what we did at Chickaloon, one at a time, and it actually worked. Because we could fix problems, and then we could go back and say, hey, how did we get in this situation? We do that, the follow-on. We find out, hey, there's skills here that aren't being developed. We could get this person back in school, get a little extra training, and they make a little more money in their job. And we began reorganizing a lot of things and providing hope. People found their own power in their own community again, and they're creating it in their own image, as they should. That's sovereignty, ladies and gentlemen. Creating a government in your own image. You're creating the image and likeness of God. How about creating your communities in the image and likeness of yourselves, each other? Not by outside influences, whether you live in LA or whether you live in Cactulic, you know, I mean, it doesn't matter where you live. Pick your place and find out what's good there. And if that's the place you want to be there. But don't go in thinking that you have something superior. Maybe you do in your world, but maybe not in theirs. And not to say one is more valuable than the other. Everything belongs within its context. I think that's fair enough to say. I love traveling the world. I love going into other cultures, and I'm very respectful when I'm there, because I came there to be a part of that. And I respect that. I respect all altars in the sense of the people that decide are not me. Doesn't mean I worship at all altars, but I can be respectful. If we're going to be human beings that grow, we need to meet people where they are. The things of homelessness is going to be a whole different group of people. They're coming. They're our neighbors, they're our friends, and we're going to have to address things differently.